Hello everyone, today we come to the final part of Chapter 1. There was no question I would go with Hijikata and chase after Ronin heading for Mount Tenno. Even carrying both a katana and a wakizashi, the Shinsengumi soldiers moved at a rapid pace. It was hard for me to keep up, and I was beginning to run short of breath when I saw someone. He was standing in front of us, but shadows obscured his face and clothes. Still, I could sense something strange about him. Hijikata seemed to sense it too, and he motioned for the men to halt. The Shinsengumi stopped, save for one man, who was either too excited or too foolish to heed the commander. "Gya!" I saw the momentary flash of steel as the man cried out. "Hey, what the hell is this?" said Nagakura. "You okay?" The man just lay there unresponsive. I could see thick red blood already beginning to pool around him. Taken aback at first by the sudden attack, the men all turned now to glare at the stranger. "Ah, judging by those jackets, you must be the Shinsengumi, boorish as always." They were already on edge, but the man's words only made the men more agitated. True, some people felt the jackets the Shinsengumi wore were a little old-fashioned, but I'd heard from the men that they had their reasons for doing so. I could tell that they wanted desperately to pay the strange man back for his taunts and for his attack on their brother, but they knew that now was not the time for revenge. "Hijikata." As I spoke, I pointed to the man in front of us. "He was at the Ikeda Inn." Hijikata's eyes narrowed, and I saw his lips pull back from his teeth just slightly. "First you got in my way at Ikeda, and now you're running around looking for more good deeds to appropriate as your own." The way he spoke made it sound as if he'd been there the night of the Battle of Ikeda Inn. "So the peasant samurai haven't had their fill of defeat yet? Oh, excuse me, you aren't even real samurai, are you?" As he spoke, I felt the air began to thicken with the rage of the Shinsengumi. "You're the swordsman from Ikeda," said Hijikata. "Those are pretty big words from such a little man." Hijikata's smile was anything but warm. "I'd heard you were talented for peasants, but after this sorry display, it looks like those rumours were just that." He looked down at the man he'd cut down and laughed. "That man from the inn, Okita, was it? Far too weak to be considered any kind of a real swordsman." Hijikata's teeth were now almost completely bared. I knew that Okita wasn't weak at all, and I wanted to tell him so, but it was true that he had been injured. "Insult Soji all you want, but how about you tell us why you killed this man first?" said Nagakura. I heard the soft hiss of Nagakura's sword sliding from its scabbard. At his feet lay the man who'd been attacked, his face now an odd pale colour. There was no doubt that he was dead. "If I don't like what I hear, then I'm gonna kill you right here," said Nagakura. The man snorted. "To defend your warrior's pride? The shogun says jump, and you say how high? Tell me, where's the pride in that?" There was anger in his voice too, but at what I didn't know. "Why are you pursuing men who've lost and fled the battlefield?" If you even pretend to have pride of your own, then you must understand that they've gone to Mount Tenno to take their own lives." What? Was he telling the truth? Did the Choshu men really mean to commit honourable suicide? I looked over at Hijikata and the rest of his men, but not a one of them looked surprised. The man in front of us was trying to stop the Shinsengumi in an attempt to protect the pride of the Choshu samurai. That was why he was mad. But is it really all right to take a man's life for the sake of someone else's pride? It seemed to me that fighting for the sake of someone else's pride wasn't really right. How could you know their heart or their thoughts? Pride is something that you have to defend yourself. How can someone keep their pride if someone else has to fight for it? In a way, I could understand his intentions, but I couldn't help but question his actions. Then are you saying I should simply allow the Shinsengumi to take what pride the Choshu have left so that they can earn a commendation for arresting them? He did not sound amused. No, that's not really what I meant, but... Under that crimson glare, my voice trailed off. I felt like I hadn't really explained myself at all. Hijikata had listened to our short conversation, and he seemed unimpressed. Pathetic. I thought you were trying to make some kind of point, stranger, but you're just whining like a child who can't get his way. This is war, you idiot. What? The man spoke through clenched teeth, and the knuckles of his sword hand had gone white. They started a fight over something stupid, said Hijikata, then didn't have the balls to see it through and ran away with their tails between their legs. Men like that don't deserve to die with honour. His voice cracked like lightning, and before I realized it, I'd taken a step back. They're traitors and cowards besides. You really think a man like that deserves an honourable death? They'll die with their guts where they belong and their heads in the dirt. Then you mean to say, said the stranger, they should have been prepared to die for their cause when they went to war? Any man who starts a fight he isn't willing to give his life for doesn't know what it means to be a warrior, said Hijikata. Let's say they do have some scrap of pride left. Wouldn't dying in battle be better than dying on your own sword? I didn't fully understand what he meant, but I could tell that Hijikata's own concept of pride and honour was not something he could easily compromise. Still, no matter how long he and the stranger spoke, I also knew that they would never see eye to eye. There was the hiss of metal as Hijikata drew his sword from its scabbard, and I saw Nagakura drop into a fighting stance. Hijikata turned to look at him, his eyes narrowed, and after muttering something angry under his breath, Nagakura stepped back and put his blade back in its sheath. You don't look like a coward to me, so I figure you're ready to finish what you started when you killed one of my men, said Hijikata. Big words from a small man, said the stranger. Do you honestly believe you can defeat me? In an instant their swords met, and the clang of metal on metal reverberated through the mid-afternoon air. They sprang apart, eyes fixed on one another, and I saw Hijikata's hands tighten on his sword. The commander was a skilled swordsman, very skilled, but this man had defeated Okita. I saw Nagakura reach for his own sword. He was clearly about to leap into the fight as well, probably hoping to help Hijikata gain the upper hand. What do I do? Do I stop Nagakura or fight as well? And I choose to stop Nagakura. No, Nagakura, you can't! This fight wasn't why the Shinsengumi had come. Their mission was to follow the Choshu rebels to Mount Tenno. There could be no doubt that the strange swordsman was an enemy, and a dangerous one. It might take our entire force to defeat him, but Hijikata would be furious if we abandoned our mission. Nagakura knew it too, and after a few moments spent grinding his teeth, he took his hand off his sword. Hey, Hijikata, I'm gonna take your guys for a bit if that's all right with you. The commander's eyes never left the swordsman's face, but his mouth curled into an almost predatory grin. And if you were watching, you may have noticed a little flutter of sakura petals. And we'll have a look a bit later because that's an indication of the social relationship status. Listen up, guys, said Nagakura. We're going to run straight for Mount Tenno, and we aren't going to stop till we get there. The soldiers roared their assent. Damn you, said the stranger. Pay attention, said Hijikata. I'll put a sword through your back as easily as your front. With Hijikata in striking distance, the swordsman didn't dare move as the soldiers of the Shinsengumi, myself among them, jogged past him toward Mount Tenno. We'll be waiting for you at Mount Tenno. It would have felt strange to leave without saying something to him. Please catch up to us soon. His eyes narrowed just a fraction, and he let out a laugh. Who the hell do you think I am? His voice was calm, confident, and slightly arrogant. I nodded to him and jogged past, falling into step with Nagakura and the rest of the men. We ran straight for Mount Tenno and didn't look back. It's almost night time. I was waiting at the base of Mount Tenno. Nagakura had led most of the men further up in search of the Choshu rebels, but a few had been left at the bottom. In the unlikely event that any of the Choshu came this way, I'd stayed with them. It'll be all right, said Kai Shimada. They'll be back soon, I'm sure of it. How many times had we done that, I wondered. Every time I seemed down, Shimada was there to cheer me up. Do you really think so? I couldn't get Hijikata out of my head. We'd left him behind fighting an opponent we knew nothing about. It was all too easy to imagine that the worst had happened. I hope he's safe. No sooner were the words out of my mouth than a shadow appeared in the dirt road in front of me. Ah! The shadow stepped toward us and into the light. Hijikata! He was all right. I felt tears spring to my eyes and shoved them away with the back of my hand. Glad to see you're safe, Commander, said Shimada. Doesn't even look like you've been injured. Good work. Shimada was right. Hijikata was without a scratch, but even so, his face was dark. I'd hoped we'd have a real fight, said Hijikata, but we'd barely started when the Satsuma stuck their noses in. What were the Satsuma doing there? His name's Chikage Kazama, said Hijikata. Seems he's part of the Satsuma. But if he's part of the Satsuma domain, Hadn't they helped the Aizu drive off the Choshu? Then why had Kazama tried to stop the Shinsengumi? I frowned. Something wasn't right. Does that mean he disobeyed orders? Kazama, I mean. Probably, said Hijikata. The men who broke up our fight seemed like they didn't know what the hell he was up to either. For whatever reason, I don't think they could push him around. He must be pretty important, said Shimada. From what Hijikata had said, Kazama was certainly a skilled, powerful warrior, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it than that. When Hijikata spoke next, his voice was bitter. He's a lazy son of a bitch with enough money or influence to do whatever the hell he feels like. He doesn't give a shit about honor or pride. There wasn't anything Shimada or I could really say in response to that, and so we fell silent. Before Hijikata could continue, we heard the sound of men approaching, and Nagakura appeared, the bulk of our detachment trailing behind him. I saw Nagakura stop for a split second when he noticed Hijikata, and then a grin tugged at the side of his face. Well, we went up to the top to have a look, said Nagakura, but every last one of those bastards had already cut themselves wide open. Oh, my heart fell as he explained. I wasn't sad that they'd killed themselves or that the Shinsengumi hadn't been able to arrest them, only that more lives had been lost. Honourable suicide, eh? Said Hijikata. Good for them. As he spoke, he flashed half a smile at Nagakura. Is that okay? Only a few hours before he'd said that they were criminals and only deserved to be beheaded, but now he was applauding them for taking their own lives? He shrugged. Not for the Shinsengumi. We let them fulfill their mission, which means we failed ours. I wanted to arrest them, but they're dead now. What good would it do to ignore what they did? Friend or enemy, a man who dies with honour deserves at least some respect. Oh, I suppose that makes some sense. It was obvious that I really only half understood what he was trying to say, and his expression softened a little. And that was the end of our journey to Mount Tenno. Together once again, we returned to the imperial estate to meet up with the rest of the Shinsengumi. On the way back, Hijikata and the men began to discuss their next move. It looked like there was still plenty for the Shinsengumi to do in Kyoto. The Choshu extremists' attempted attack on the imperial estate eventually came to be known as the Hamaguri Rebellion. Although the Shinsengumi were called to action, their efforts were stymied and they found little in the way of glory. Communication with their superiors had been poor at best, and they spent much of the battle waiting with the reserves. When the Shinsengumi did finally enter the battle, they found several strange opponents awaiting them. Chikage Kazama, the man who had defeated Okita at Ikeda, claimed to be from the Satsuma domain during his encounter with Hijikata. Kyuju Amagiri, the man who had shattered Heisuke's headguard at Ikeda, also claimed membership in the Satsuma. They had also met Kyo Shiranui, who'd fought alongside men from Choshu. Whoever they were, it was clear they were not allies of the Shinsengumi. Indeed, it seemed they could easily become some of its greatest enemies. If they were to meet an open battle, the casualties would be severe. By the time the battle was over, the commanders of the Choshu attack had been killed in the fighting or taken their own lives. There were some soldiers, however, who escaped, setting Kyoto ablaze as they fled. By some terrible misfortune, the wind that day blew from the north and fanned the flames, reducing the southern end of the imperial estate to ash. As a result of the Choshu attack, many imperial nationalists were executed. After everything had been sorted out, the Shinsengumi were at last given permission to patrol outside of Kyoto from Osaka to Hyogo. No sooner had they been given permission than they set to work, rounding up unruly ronin and defending the public good. With the Hamaguri rebellion over, the Choshu were branded as traitors for attacking the estate. From then on they were acknowledged enemies of the court. And now I just want to show you the encyclopedia with the status section. This section will show us how many of the Shinsengumi there are that we can develop a relationship with, a romance, and how we're going. So here you can see the individual Shinsengumi, and we have 5 there. I believe eventually we will have 6, and you can check the status of each one of them. They each have 1 petal, so I suppose that's normal, having only just finished chapter 1. I don't know if it's been obvious, but I've been trying to take decisions that would throw me into Hijikata's way to develop my romance with him. I'm hopeful, but we'll see how it goes. I hope you're looking forward to chapter 2. I certainly am. Until then, I bid you goodbye. Thank you very much, as always, for watching.